Is Gregoire Dunleavy, or Greg Dunleavy, you know. My father was Irish, my mother was Acadian, mix of Acadian and Métis.
Wow.
You know, French Acadian and Métis. And I was born in Ottawa, but raised in Montreal. And I spent a few years in New Brunswick. And I finally came back to Montreal the beginning of the 80s. Mm-hmm. And at that time I was a craftsperson. And I got the idea to write up a petition, and I wrote up the petition, and I got it photocopied, and I passed it out to all the musicians who were playing in the Metro, and I told them to get it signed by the public. And the day that I came out with the petition, it was the last day of the Salon Métier d'Art at Place Bonaventure. Mm. And so myself and this other guy, Frank from France, he and I went up into the Salon Métier d'Art after we finished playing. Yeah. And we started getting people up there to sign. We walked out of the Salon Métier d'Art that night with 1,000 signatures on our petition.
Oh my God.
You know?
That's great.
And then over the next couple of weeks, we just kept, next few weeks, we kept accumulating signatures.
Yeah.
And anyway, the next day, I phoned the newspapers and media, and the Gazette was really obnoxious. I hate to say it, you know, they were really obnoxious. They said, when you have something spectacular to tell us, call us back, you know. La Presse was very, very open.
La Presse,
the editor of La Presse said, look, he said, I really like what you're saying. He said, as soon as the Christmas holidays are finished, you give me a call back. I said, well, what date would that be? He said, give me a call on the 3rd of January. So on the 3rd of January, I called him up and he said, look, can you be at Barrie Metro with 3 other musicians in about 2 or 3 hours' time? Uh-huh. I said, okay. He said, I'm going to send you a photographer and a journalist.
Excellent.
So I said, okay. So we did it, and the next day, we ended up getting a half a page coverage on page 2 of La Presse.
Wow.
You know, with a nice big photo, you know, very positive towards the Metro musicians. Yeah. And so anyway, that afternoon, I get home, and my answering machine is full. I've got calls from TV stations, from radio stations, from other newspapers who all want to interview.
Yeah. Wow.
So that started a whole snowball effect, which lasted the whole month of January that year, you know, and we were constantly on radio, on TV, and in papers, you know, and all very positive.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, so mind you, the Transport Commission, there were some radio panels, radio discussion shows and discussion panels where they'd have a spokesperson from the Transport Commission, and they'd have me talking. And the spokesperson from the Transport Association was a music professor from McGill.
Oh, no. And
he would say things like, oh, well, one of the reasons that we don't see the point in letting musicians play is because none of them are really good musicians. There's not any good musicians who play in the Metro. And about like 5 minutes later, 2 minutes later, one of the panelists would ask him, well, what's the problem with just letting them play there? I mean, you know, they're not disturbing anybody. Well, because if there's ever an emergency, they'll be blocking the passage because people, there could be crowds of people surrounding them, listening to them.
But they're not very good.
And so the panelist said to him, but you just said a couple of minutes ago that none of these musicians are any good, so nobody ever stops for them. And now you're trying to tell us that they're going to block the corridor with the crowds that are surrounding them.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Framed. Whoops.
So anyway, whoops. You know, and this
serves him right. He totally is.
He would constantly trip himself up like this.
Right. Because there's no reason for it not to be.
No. And we did at least about 10 interviews, radio interviews like this, where he'd be on one line and I'd be on another line.
Oh my God! Okay, so there was just a challenge.
He'd be constantly tripping himself up, you know, with these ridiculous contradictions, you know. Mm. So anyway, we ended up with a lawyer from Legal Aid, and the the lawyer decided to put all of us on the same day for our preliminary hearing. So there was about 20 musicians, and we all ended up in court at the same time. And then there was this one musician, Steve Smith, who was going to have his trial. He had already had his preliminary hearing. He was going to trial. So the judge passed all the people for their preliminary hearing first.
Yeah.
And that day we arrived into the courtroom with our petition with more than 10,000 signatures on it.
Yeah.
And so anyway, our lawyer passed us all, and got us all to go one after the other for the preliminary, and then they go to the trial of Steve Smith. So there had been so much publicity, so much coverage of the whole Metro musician thing, that everybody was aware of it, even the judge, you know. So after all the preliminaries went by, the judge says, okay, we're going to pass to the trial of Steve Smith now, so all of the rest of you musicians, you can go back to work. You know, so everybody started cracking up laughing, because work for us meant going back and playing in the Metro, and it wasn't legal to play.
It wasn't legal yet, yeah.
You know? So anyway, then the trial starts, you know, and and our lawyer said to the judge, he said, okay, look, he said, since we're here in the province of Quebec, the official language is French, right? And so the judge said, yes. So he said, so therefore we should take the French translation of the Metro regulation, of the subway regulation. And the judge said, okay, I'll go along with that, you know. Now, in the English translation, it said, you're not allowed to play a radio or a musical instrument in the Metro. In the French translation, it said, c'est interdit de faire fonctionner un appareil de radio ou un instrument de musique dans le métro. Now, faire fonctionner means to function, you know, or operate, you know. And so our lawyer argued, he said, okay, you can operate a sewing machine, you can operate a car, you can operate a piece of machinery, a washing machine. You can't operate a musical instrument, you play a musical instrument. So the judge is going through his thesauruses and his dictionaries and his encyclopedias, and finally he looks at the lawyer and he says, okay, I'll concede that point.
Excellent.
And so the lawyer said, well, Your Honor, in that case, I think that this the case is moot and it should be thrown out of court.
Yeah.
You know, the judge said, I agree. So they threw it out.
That's great.
And
celebration for that.
So the Transport Commission had 3 weeks to appeal.
Yeah.
And they never appealed.
That's good, yeah.
And so anyway, then we decided to form ourselves into an association, to have a serious look to ourselves, you know, and especially if we were going to start negotiating with the Transport Commission.
Yes, of course.
There was an article that came out in